Welcome back to the podcast series. Digital learning is not just about hardware procurement. I am Rohit Prakash, and in the first episode, we deep dived with Shri Anil Swarup ji, who is former Secretary of Education, Government of India, to understand that the ecosystem's current obsession with just the hardware procurement is a big reason why actual learning is not happening on the ground. We established that hardware procurement gets you the publicity, but at the end of the day, it is merely a makeup if it is not supported by fundamental issues like data tracking and monitoring. In episode 2, we move from what to the how. We look at why teacher training is an important process that must be followed if we have to shift the learning levels of children from level A to level B. In most states, mass events happen. District level training programs are done for the teachers where they are told what is being given to them, but the real value proposition never gets internalized inside them. As a result, we have hardware sitting inside the almirahs or dusting away, or teachers who, after a week of the training, don't even remember for what purpose had they attended the training. So in this episode, we'll talk about why there's a need to shift the training from supply-driven to demand-driven. We look at the granularity to understand which teacher should be invited to attend the training and for what purpose. How to create a value proposition for the teachers so that they genuinely understand the value of what is being given to them and how to use it in the classroom. And most importantly, and finally, we want to talk about why this solid, hard groundwork is extremely important if we want to transform the learning outcomes in our country. So, welcome back to the podcast series. I want to start by asking you that in the last podcast that we had, you mentioned that the district level teacher training programs often become jamborees where teachers attend but don't internalize what is being taught or what is being shared with them. So the question is, when data shows that these trainings are ineffective, why are most states continuing with it?
Very difficult for me to answer that because only the states would know why they sent or why they are not making the best use of the training. I can lay my finger on a couple of things. Number one is the quality of training that gets imparted and what is being imparted. So if the trainings are focused and adhering to the requirements of the hardware that is to be used, then probably some changes will come about. But usually what happens is that for training, you pick up a guy and send him. You don't even see whether that guy is required to be trained. So it's more to do with numbers than individuals. So there has to come about that understanding of each individual who's sent for training. Now, DIKSHA platform that has been created can be of enormous help in this, in determining the background of a teacher who goes to a training. So first is the subject. Who's being trained? Because if the person who's being trained does not have the foundational understanding of what he's going to do, he's not related to the use of computers and things like that. So somebody who's teaching English in a class and goes for this computer training, for him it will be Greek. So why should he be sent on training? I don't think that level of detailing happens when teachers are selected for training. So who is very important? Then second, what is being imparted in a training? So the curriculum, the pedagogy, and then how. That is, how is the teacher being trained? Because if these training cater to the ultimate requirement of equipping the trained, the teacher, in making the best use of the hardware and the software that is available in the school, then the impact would be visible. This takes me to a very fundamental question. I think this program has been going on for a while. I'm not very sure whether any impact evaluation of the hardware and the software has been done. Intuitively, one can say that the desired learning outcomes are not there. That's more of intuitive statement. But whether there has been a third-party evaluation on the impact of this hardware and software, because while making an assessment, you can actually find out if the desired impact is not there, then why is it not there? Is it on account of the teachers not being trained appropriately? Is it on account of not usage of that hardware itself? So first we'll have to clearly identify as to why aren't these learning outcomes improving as a consequence of this technological intervention. One of the reasons, again intuitively speaking, would be that teachers are not appropriately trained, the point that you are raising. So let us assume that that is one of the reasons, and then we'll have to work out if they are not able to impart the training to the students, then whether they are themselves trained, and that takes to the third question, whether the right people are being assigned the task of imparting that training in the schools. And if they are, then what needs to be done to them? That is the nature of training that gets imparted to them. Now, this training cannot be of a very generalized nature. It can't be any training. My understanding is, by and large, it happens to be any training. And so anybody in any training, anyhow trained, how do you expect a person to be trained enough to go and impart those lessons to the children?
That's mostly happening, in my view, because it is just a simple line item in the RFP document that you got to conduct trainings. But the RFP document never specifies or answers all the questions that you're just raising.
Let us look at it slightly differently. I would not say that it is on account of absence in the RFP document that it is not happening. Even if it is there, it may not happen. So my contention is there has to be a second level of sensitization, and as distinct from training. Those people who are responsible to carry out these programs should first be sensitized into understanding very clearly the clear objectives of having this hardware and software sitting in the school and the purpose thereof, and how that purpose can be achieved, and the role of trainers and the training in achieving those objectives. Now, this aspect is not even discussed anywhere. Training will come only after those that are responsible to carry out such training courses are themselves committed to it. They want to do it. And I'm not very sure whether a statement in RFP is going to bring about a change. I think a better way of going about it is that those in decision-making levels or senior levels should be able to convey this message very clearly to the people in the field that this is an extremely important aspect. So that sensitization is important. And then, of course, an appropriate level of selection of those that get trained, the appropriate selection of the curriculum, the pedagogy adopted, the location, all these things become very important in terms of imparting the right training.
So let's break down each of those aspects as you spoke about. The first one was about selecting teachers, appropriate teachers who should actually go for the training. For the benefit of people, and I hope state officials who may look at this podcast, can we help them to understand what process can they follow to identify the right teachers? You mentioned about DIKSHA.
Yeah, now it's not very difficult now it's very not that difficult. Earlier, say in the state of UP, there are thousands of teachers, and how do you determine who's to do what? DIKSHA has, I remember this 8 years ago, I'm sure it must have improved now. DIKSHA has this data of teachers with their background. So it becomes easy for you to select teachers who have some background in science or in computers to be selected for training purposes, and they in turn come back to the school and use the
Are we
computers.
saying we identify those teachers who are using DIKSHA platform?
Not necessarily. They don't have
what
to
are you
use.
referring to? Yeah.
What I'm saying is, for selecting such teachers, you have to have a data centrally available to determine which of the teachers is capable of training students and thereby be trained further to impart that teaching to the children. So how do you select those teachers? Earlier, it was very difficult. In physical form, to find out which teacher becomes very difficult. In electronic form, it's much easier. You can immediately give a command and say, who all are qualified in this, maybe BSc or whatever. And you'll get the data, and then you'll be able to identify who. I distinctly remember at that point in time, there were professional trainees. So they used to go to every training. A teacher would go to every training because he was not doing anything elsewhere. Now, how do you train a person? Here it has to be very focused. You have to find out, okay, this teacher is going to teach computers or whatever in the schools. So you identify him clearly and then send him to training. So who is very important. If you pick up the wrong person there, then even if you have a great training program, the purpose will not be served. So start from who.
And this identification of who is extremely important, because the way trainings happen right now at district level or at a cluster level, the concept is a master trainer. So basically we are training the master trainers, and then they are going back to the school and they're expected to train the rest of the teachers and the students as well. So it's extremely important that the right person...
Identification, but it is easy now. As I said, because of DIKSHA, it's not that difficult as it was earlier.
Correct. Second question would be to understand, how do we build the right value proposition with the teachers? How do we make them so strongly convinced on the idea of whatever is being given to them, what value it has? So currently, because we have also attended some of the trainings, currently the trainings are very transactional, very operational in nature, where we focus about, हाँ हमने आपको ये हार्डवेयर दिया है, हार्डवेयर से चलता है, ऐसे बंद होता है, ये LMS है, यहाँ पे क्लिक करेंगे तो LMS खुल जाएगा, और यहाँ पे ऐसे लॉगिन करना है. That is I feel is a big gap, because those kind of trainings are being conducted by vendors who are typically the hardware guys or system integrators and bidders, right? Not really people from academic or education background. इस प्रॉब्लम को कैसे हम लोग सॉल्व कर सकते
You know, what really needs to be done is to understand the objective of this entire program. The objective primarily is to improve the learning outcomes of children. Okay. How does that happen? Through various programs that are built in the hardware, wherein it becomes easy or convenient or better for a child to learn through that process. That is the ultimate objective. If that be the case, and the trainer or the teacher comes to understand that the learning outcomes of the children will improve through use of these hardware and programs, then that itself is an incentive. Because what is the ultimate objective of a teacher? Ultimate objective of a teacher is to equip the child in a better manner. The learning outcomes improve. So that becomes a motivation for him, or that should become a motivation for him, that children are learning faster than they were otherwise without the help of this technology. So that becomes an incentive. The teacher himself can feel fulfilled by learning additional things. So even at this age of mine, so for example, these days AI has come. The first time I used ChatGPT, Grammarly, I felt very kicked even at this age. So you acquire more understanding, more knowledge, more instruments. You feel good about it. And that should be a good enough a motivation. Of course, people can talk in terms of financial motivation and things like that. I don't think that will work here. But more in terms of self-fulfillment, in terms of being able to understand the new ways in which you can improve your knowledge or understanding.
But the teachers who are, whose main purpose is to go inside the classroom, teach the students, and हम जानते हैं government school teachers are also overburdened with so many other responsibilities as well. ऐसे माहौल में कैसे हम उनको inspire कर रहे हैं to understand those
Okay,
value
so let me
propositions?
tell you.
Can financial incentives solve this problem?
No. I'll tell you, if their drudgery can be reduced. Let me give you an example. The teachers have to fill in so many formats. Okay. Now, if I have a computer sitting in my room, and if the programs are designed, I don't have to fill all the forms. I will have to only fill in the variable data for that particular day or month or week. The rest of it is already there. So I look at this at three basic data sets. One is the permanent data, which would sit in the computer. I don't have to write in at every form again. The second is calculation, which I had to do manually if I had to fill in a form. Third is the variable data. So first two are unnecessary activities which the teacher was performing earlier. Through use of computers, he has only to put the variable data and rest happens. All the formats get designed. He doesn't have to write the previous year's or previous month's or previous week's performance. So all is already sitting there. So it reduces the drudgery of a teacher phenomenally. Look, for example, even say attendance. So I'm thinking aloud and I'm looking ahead. Suppose you have a biometric attendance there. The teacher doesn't have to call out a name. He doesn't have to tick or sign somewhere. The child comes, puts in his thumb impression, the data gets generated. So look at the reduction in drudgery, and everyone likes that because then he or she has spare time to do other things. So that can be a huge value proposition. During my own career in the offices, this is the value proposition I convey to my officers. In a particular organization where tens of people were sitting and compiling data, writing data, filling in forms, I just told them that you use this program. All you have to fill in is this. Something which used to take days together was done in hours. You put that data, reduce the drudgery. He can go home early. The same job gets done. So this needs to be demonstrated as to how it can bring value to a teacher. Take, for example, evaluation. Okay. Now, as AI comes in, evaluation becomes so much easier. So it reduces the job of the teacher. So again, I am reducing the time of the teacher. Technology becomes helpful. The moment you demonstrate to a teacher that it is helpful to you. Take, for example, leave application. Earlier, I don't know now, earlier, the teacher had to go to the block to submit an application for leave, or principal had to go to block. Now he doesn't have to, he just file it through the internet. Application goes, the sanction comes through the net, he doesn't have to go there. So reduction in all these useless activities which we did earlier can be a value proposition to the teacher.
Quite an important point, sir. And that's can become an underlying focus for these kind of training that are being organized, because abhi wo bahut operational hai.
In a training, this needs to be demonstrated to the teacher.
Exactly.
Usually what happens is, what I am telling you, they're not aware. If I tell a teacher, this is the value that will come to you, if not everyone, many of them will agree with me. Yes, it will reduce my drudgery, unnecessary running around.
Unfortunately, the kind of people who are going for the trainings are also not aware of these value benefits. तो सर थोड़ा सा ट्रेनिंग के बारे में बात करते हैं. ट्रेनिंग का स्ट्रक्चर अगर हम डिफाइन करने की कोशिश करें तो ऑफ कोर्स सम पार्ट ऑफ training has to be technical or operational in nature, जहाँ पे हम उनको बता रहे हैं कि आपके पास ये application है, इस पर click करना है, login करना है. But purely from digital learning point of view, can you help us identify 2 or 3 tracks on which we should talk about during teacher training? Like for example, one, as I was sharing with you earlier also, is lesson planning. Teachers are not able to understand that whatever digital learning content is being given to them, उसको अपन lesson plan में natural तरीके से कैसे integrate कर सकते हैं. And because they don't know that, therefore they don't end up using it in the classroom also. But once you demonstrate that and train them on how to create such lesson plan, they're also able to go back and use it. ऐसे और क्या elements है which you think should be included?
इसमें करना क्या चाहिए इनको कि टीचर्स ही कुछ ऐसे पकड़ने चाहिए जो इस काम को करके लाभान्वित हो रहे हैं, who are benefiting out of it. You know, usually क्या होता है, ट्रेनर ने आगे समझा दिया उनको, looks very theoretical. What, again, not in this context, but in other contexts, I used to get people who are doing it. You come and tell us how it's done. So the same person, same position is doing it, it carries more conviction. Secondly, when he says that he is benefiting out of it, then the others listen to him. Otherwise, जैसे मैं अक्सर मजाक में कहता हूँ कि हलवाई तो अपनी जलेबी को अच्छा बताएगा. जिसने खाया है, वो अगर बताए, they have benefited from it, it will carry much more conviction. It helps enormously. So, whereas training is important, who's training them is even more important. So if you have a pure person coming from district and telling them ये करो, तो it's like, you know, giving an order. But जिसने किया है वो आके बताए, तो कहेंगे हमने तो किया है, मैं भुगतभोगी हूँ, मुझे लाभ हुआ है. It will carry much more conviction. So it's who's being trained, we discussed that. Then who's training them becomes equally more important. And this requires again a bit of research. You'll have to find out in the district as to who have already done it. और हर डिस्ट्रिक्ट में ऐसे कुछ ना कुछ लोग मिल जाएंगे. इनफैक्ट once they are recognized as trainers, others will aspire to become trainers. You know, everyone wants recognition. So this becomes an incentive for everyone to become a trainer. You can take them to other districts also. So it's a question of building. It's not a financial incentive, but it's a recognition incentive, which is much more important than financial. You know, everyone wants recognition. You recognize, okay, in this district, he's my trainer. He's a teacher, but he's my trainer. Call him. He may not know how to train. That you can tell him what to say. But he has experienced it. And once an experienced person tells, it carries much more conviction.
This is a very powerful insight, sir. And if I think if someone has to take away one thing from this podcast, this should be one thing that is extremely relevant to take away for the audience. थोड़ा trainer के profile पे भी बात करते हैं, because people who are, so one, of course, you mentioned that taking experienced teachers along with you for the training is going to be extremely helpful. Agreed. Currently, जिस तरह के लोग ट्रेनिंग के लिए जा रहे हैं, majority of them are, as I said, hardware guys or system integrators, bidders who have a field team who are going to the school for the training purpose. Right now, they are not well qualified and not able to deliver on those value proposition. Right. So, can we help us also put together some structure as to what profile of people should we look at, and state government should focus on sending those kind of people to the
See, the hardware people will tell you how to use the hardware. Beyond it, they don't have much of a role. Yeah. But the value proposition cannot be given by the hardware people. Value proposition can only be conveyed by who understand that value. And the best would be who have used it. So anyone who's used it will be in a better position. I come back to the same point. It will have to be a combination of hardware people and people who have used it. Either of them will not work. Because if the user does not understand the hardware, then usage will be difficult. But the hardware chap will not be able to convey that value proposition with someone who's used it. So it has to be a combination of the hardware people who will tell where to switch on, which button to push, how to solve a problem if there is any troubleshooting, etc. But what is the value proposition? So suppose computations are to be enabled on a computer. So hardware will tell you this is how it is. But someone who's used it, he will be able to say, how did it help me? So last time I think I gave this example of Archimedes' principle. When I was in class 9 or 8, I was trying to understand Archimedes' principle. I couldn't get a hang of it. It took me a lot of time to understand. As Secretary of School Education, someone came and showed me a 1.5-minute video, and I understood Archimedes' principle like this. So now, guys who've used it will be able to convey that this is how this program can be used to make you understand which you otherwise find it difficult. So whether it's language, or improving your language, improving your communication skills, the programs can be extremely helpful. So the hardware or software chap will come and say, this is what is available. The one who's used it and felt benefited will be able to say, I used it. This is how I used it. Initially, I had this problem. I went through this. This was the improvement that I brought about. And this is the benefit that is accrued to me. So he will tell you the whole process of learning. He's gone through that. And everyone goes through a troublesome process of learning. But once you arrive, then you can say that I committed these mistakes, you need not do it. So that's where the practitioner comes in. So the hardware and such people both have to go together.
So that's again very, very important point being raised. And I genuinely feel that if we intend to create learning outcome improvement in the government schools, children, training becomes an extremely important part of the procurement that happens in the government school. I want to touch upon two more aspects. One is training right now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, is always supply driven. So we go and train, right? But there is no mechanism for teachers to request for training as and when they may require additional support. Any views or thoughts on that? How can we provision this for the government school teachers?
So what actually happens now is, it is top driven. Someone decides so much training has to happen. It's not demand driven. So, okay, training programs organized. I'm not aware whether any feedback is taken from the people who are trained. Once you have this communication channel set up, then you'll get a feedback as to, number one, whether they benefited by the training that happened. Number two, whether there are any additional requirements, whether they want some more assistance, and if so, what is the assistance? I'm not very sure whether that is happening, whether a two-way communication is happening between those that are trained and those that are training, or those who are tasked with training.
One challenge is, sir, that they're not split. So the people who are going and doing the training are the ones who are collecting the feedback as well.
There's no harm.
We did that as well. So, but I realized that, to our trainers, teachers were courteous and all the teachers were giving us good feedback and accepting the value of what has been told to them. But the same teachers, when they went back and I contacted them 7-10 days hence, couldn't even remember what training had they attended.
So what really should happen is, it's not merely a criticism. I mean, they are giving a feedback with regard to what additionally can happen, or so it's not being critical of anybody. So I don't think trainers will have any reservation to receiving this feedback in terms of how could they further value add or add value to what they were doing. So this sort of a communication needs to be encouraged between those that have been trained and those that are training or tasked with the training program. It happens in most of government programs. We don't have a institutionalized feedback framework with our own subordinates. I mean, someone may mention it to you, but there's no institutional framework. In this sort of a scenario, we have to build that institutional framework. In fact, I don't know whether they have it, whether they have an institutional feedback form to be submitted post-training, and then maybe 1 month down the line, again a second feedback. This can be institutionalized. Whether you remember, whether you don't remember anything that has come to your mind, I think this could be induced. If it is designed so that after the training, we'll take a feedback form, we'll feedback from them, and 1 month or 2 months down the line, we'll have another feedback from them. And not merely feedback, it's some sort of evaluation of the person who's trained also. So you get how you have used it, what manner have you used it, any other feedback that you want to give. I don't think that happens now. Government doesn't run through feedback. I mean, I've been in the government for 38 years. There are hardly any institutionalized feedback mechanism. In government, we don't do that. With an outsider, we may take feedback, but within the government, I don't think I ever asked my joint secretaries to fill in a form to give me a feedback. I mean, that's not how it works. But I think we should have to rethink about it. And especially in training programs, we have to get that feedback. It may work somewhere, it may not work somewhere. But at least we would be much better off than not taking feedback.
And if those feedbacks can be heard by the right stakeholders and a process can be made to act upon those.
Yes, we can do that. Even if that is not done, just the feedback. I mean, there would be some enlightened trainers who would like to benefit from that feedback. Others may not. But those people will improve. So let's make a beginning there. But without any feedback, there's nothing that is happening. You don't even know what's going to happen. As you discovered, then later on, they forgot everything. Now, if they have to give a feedback, the trained person will also be alert that I have to give a feedback 1 month down the line. So I better be aware of what I'm doing. So it's a question of creating that buzz of being engaged.
Any suggestions, sir, for the states to establish a demand-driven training mechanism for the teachers? How can they enable this?
I would start by first sensitizing the decision makers at the top level. They must understand what they are getting into. If they don't understand, nothing will go down. So they should be very clear in their mind that so much money is being spent on programs and hardware. This is the objective. How do we achieve that objective? Is the objective procurement of hardware? Is the objective installing those programs? Is the objective just training people? The objective is improvement in learning outcomes. So first thing that needs to be done is, the moment you supply this hardware, you do a benchmarking of children there. And then work out these processes of training, of delivering, whatever. And then maybe a year down the line, check whether learning outcomes have improved. This is the first step. Now, if this doesn't happen at the top level, if they don't push it, it will not happen. Nothing else will follow. So you have to have periodic evaluation, impact evaluation of whatever that is happening. That will help the decision maker, at least those that want, to tweak their program accordingly to see whether learning outcomes are improving. That tweaking will be in the context of training, in context of trainers, in context of processes. All that will happen.
In our experience, just to share with you, wherever smart classrooms have worked for the teachers and students, there are two things that we have done. One was, of course, doing experiential training for the teachers with focus on helping them understand the value of whatever is being given to them. चाहे वो content है, अगर content दिया गया तो अलग अलग तरीके का content है, तो हर content category की क्या value proposition है उनकी teaching और उनके pedagogy के लिए. Second thing which we have been doing is a monthly review system with the teachers, wherein we take the data back to them and share with them and transparently. प्रिंसिपल के साथ बैठते हैं, टीचर के साथ बैठते हैं, वहाँ पर दिखाते हैं कि देखिए आपने पिछले महीने में ये डेटा पॉइंट्स थे, मैथ ने इतना यूज़ किया, साइंस ने इतना यूज़ किया, क्लास में आपका यूसेज ये है, एंड दैट इज़ एबल टू ब्रिंग अ लॉट ऑफ इंसाइट एंड दे आर एबल टू विजुअलाइज कि अच्छा मैंने यूज़ नहीं किया या साइंस टीचर ने इसको यूज़ नहीं किया ठीक से, एंड प्रिंसिपल देन डायरेक्ट्स देम टू
that is the way forward, and that needs to be universalized. So my suggestion would be, since you've done it, work out a protocol which can then be shared with other states, that this is the protocol that was followed. This was the impact of enforcing this protocol in the field. This is how it can be enforced, and that needs to be improvised and customized and universalized.
Third thing that has worked, just to add on to my point, is building teacher communities, and here WhatsApp has been extremely useful. So in small pockets, we get teachers together on a WhatsApp group, and then regularly teachers keep sharing pictures and videos of how they're using digital learning inside the classroom, and that has been extremely inspiring for other teachers to look at it.
Absolutely.
And then they also start using it.
Absolutely.
So it circles back to the point that you were mentioning, that how an person who has experienced the good thing about using something in the classroom, if that person comes and trains, it changes the
See,
whole
you've
game.
hit the nail on the head. Everyone aspires for recognition. This is one way of recognizing teachers and creating that awareness within that community of teachers as to what is happening and learning from each other. This is the way forward to my mind.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful to speak with you again. And today we spoke about something which is extremely critical and can actually lay the foundation of if we have to achieve the learning outcome improvement with the government school children. Sir, any closing remarks for people who will be listening?
All I can say is that if we don't train the teachers appropriately, then all this money goes down the drain. It's so critical to make it happen. It's so critical to improving learning outcomes. Technology is just a tool. Hardware is just a tool. The guys who are going to make it happen are the teachers, and hence they play a very, very important role. I think a lot of time and effort has to go into training these teachers appropriately so that they attempt to improve the learning outcomes of children.
And this is real hard work, but something which must be done if we want to bring the transformation in our country.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.